You're listening to a podcast from the Finnish Football Show. Yes, it's a Finnish Football Show. We're back again. I'm Mark Wiltshire, joined today by Rich Nelson.
Hey.
And we also have a special guest today, Ville, who is a VPS Vaasa fan. We've got him on to come and talk through their season so far. We've been bigging up Vepsu for the last, couple of months really, as they've gone on this unbeaten run. So we've got our man sort of in black and white stripes to come on and talk to us today. We're also going to look back at the last couple of Nations League games for the Finland women's team. The Helmarit, a relatively straightforward 4-1 win at home to Slovakia, followed by something of an ordeal really over in Romania in heat, humidity, and basically played in a swamp from what I could see. Heavy old pitch over there, but we'll get into the details there a little bit later. But I think what we should do, Rich, is wait for the referee's whistle and then crack on with the Veikkausliiga. And it seemed to work quite well last time. So I'll go through the most recent scores, and then Rich, you can talk us through the two different tables, and Ville will bring you in after that, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so in the Mestaruussarja, there were again 3 more games. It was Honka 0, VPS Vaasa 3, FC Inter 0, Cup Skopje 1, and Asiko Seinäjoki 2, Hoijiko Helsinki 3. Hurts to say it. What does that do to the league, that top half of the league table, Rich?
Well, since then as well, we've had tonight, we've had Hoijiko beat Honka 3-0. So that game was brought forward for the Suomen Cup final. So as we stand, Hoijiko are 7 points clear of Cups, who have 3 games left. So unfortunately, I think that means now that VPS are unable to win the championship after their run. So if Cups, I think if they fail to win, if they lose to Asiko on Sunday, then Hoijiko win the title.
And it won't be happening on Sunday then.
Probably not, no. But Cups are at home in that game as well. So, so that's a 7-point gap. So realistically, Hoijiko are likely to wrap that up in their next fixture. But then you've got Cups, 7 points behind, got 46 points. They were very, very fortunate to be Inter on Saturday. Inter missed 2 penalties in the second half through Timo Stavitsky, and then Cups were awarded a very, very generous penalty in I think it's the 4th or 5th minute of injury time for a handball that was very clearly outside the box. We get on to in 3rd place now, having been, and I'm sure Ville will talk to us in more detail, but from bottom in mid to late June, and now in 3rd place in the Veikkausliiga after 12 consecutive wins is VPS, who are on 42 points, 13 wins, 3 draws, and 8 defeats. So, yeah, they've really, really caught up. So those 12 games, and with a 3-0 win at Honka on Friday. And they're just, whatever's going on there. We've had, Ville going, but Peter Michael can't stop scoring. The goal that did the rounds was quite root uksi. It was, what's gone on there has been absolutely spectacular. And again, breathing down the necks of what we saw in about a third of the way through the season when Asiko, Cups, Hoijiko were very clear at the top. Asiolu threatened at one point to sort of join that party. They're now in the bottom half of the table, and VPS are very much in contention for a medal, possibly silver.
Yeah,
So
very possibly.
who saw that coming? In fourth place, we've got Honka, who again, lost this evening to Hoiko, but on the balance of things, I think over the season they've had, they can't argue too much, having lost their two best attacking players at the start of the season, in Modesta and Sadiku, but they've done pretty well. I think they kept most of the rest of the team together. Some of the new signings haven't done so bad. Roman Eremenko has been on and off. He's looked very good in some games and very much a passenger in others. But Koski in the defence has been impressive, and they're going to Saturday's Suomen Cup final, probably the favourites, I think, against Ilves. But I think overall they didn't start too well in the season, but I think they've really picked up in that middle section. So they're fourth and I guess in contention on two fronts for European football next season, which would be a nice little opportunity for them. And in fifth place, Asiko. What's that? 7 defeats and 8 now.
Yes. Maybe we'll talk about that another day. We're coming to the end of the season. Let's focus on the positive from Vaasa rather than the negatives from here.
Yes. So got Asiko in fifth and Inter in sixth, who were fairly unfortunate to lose at the weekend. But again, their season has flickered at times. I think with Jarkko Wist coming in at the start of the season, everyone thought that might be kind of them getting back up towards the medal positions, but really it's been fairly average. I think they've had a couple of their good young players are coming through. Bismarck Ampofo has been really impressive in midfield. He was signed originally for their reserves and impressed so well that he started in the first team and got himself a new contract out of it. He's probably been the bright spark for the season, to be honest, for them. But yeah, sixth place. And by virtue of that, they'll be at least in the Europa Conference League playoffs.
Okay, Haastajasarja. The most recent results: FC Lahti 2, AC Oulu 1, KTP 0, Ilves 3, Mariehamn 2, Haka 1, and another result tonight in there as well, Rich, which was Ilves 2, Mariehamn 1.
Yeah, it's Oulu's season's just gone terribly since the summer. There's a number of reasons for it, and with the coach Ricardo Duarte leaving his post about 3 weeks ago, last week he went on the social media offensive, basically saying it was all going really well, and then they got rid of me, and look how badly it's gone. What he'd done at the club was really impressive. They'd had, I think, their best season ever under him. He developed a lot of players, and things were going pretty well. He then said he was leaving at the end of the season and lasted about 2 more weeks after that. The results have been poor. The players who were scoring freely, I think at one point they were the top scorers. They were looking really, really impressive. And then all of a sudden it just went off a cliff. Otso Limata went to Portugal, and I think there've been some changes at boardroom level as well. Not that should have a big impact, but defensively they were always somewhat suspect. But yeah, even now going into this part of the season, and limping towards the end, and we'll see what happens at the end of the year. But those 10 wins out of 24 games is looking less impressive by the time. But to lose to Lahti, God, terrible.
So we got Lahti on 28 points, followed by Haka 25. Followed by Ilves on 27 after tonight's result. Yeah. Then Haka on 25. Second from bottom in that playoff place is KTP on 20, and bottom Mariehamn with 18, which even leaves those bottom two places quite up for grabs in the final few games.
Because Mariehamn won recently and sort of narrowed that gap, because the gap was 5 points from them to KTP. KTP's decision to sack Lepelahti, I guess it's one of those that it can go one way or the other, really. It can go and you can get a bounce. They brought in Juha Malinen and nothing's happened, which is a shame, because they had a fairly good, by their standards, sort of first half of the season or so, things were looking okay. Haka had a good run of form. Ilves have come in at the right time, and even Lahti started picking up wins. So it's difficult for them. And I think, as you say, it's going to be between them and Mariham to decide the order of what happens, who goes down automatically and who'll place a playoff. But I guess Corte have still got that game in hand now, so they've got 3 games left.
Yeah.
Mariham have 2. But it's a shame because Mariham have been, obviously, they were the champions in 2016 and been in the division for 15 or so years now, I think. So whatever happens, they're going to be at least facing a relegation playoff. And yes, it's tough to see, but I think, again, like you said, that this is the perils of this part of the campaign, is that the bottom teams are going to start taking points off each other, and that gap gets a little bit bigger. So we'll see. I think after the next round of games, we'll have a much better idea. But yeah, and again, we're in the position that if the table stays as it is, Oulu or Lahti, or Oulu and Lahti could be in the European playoffs, which is ridiculous. But
it's ridiculous when you look at the teams and how they've performed in the last half a season. But if you went on the form of the last half a season, there's a couple of teams in the top half that don't really deserve to be there on current form. So,
well, even VPS were in the final last year, weren't they? So they played Haka in the final, and they I mean, VPS had a fairly good season last year, nothing compared to this, but a bit of momentum. It's like the playoffs in England.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe we'll talk in a bit more detail about these European playoffs in a couple of weeks' time, when we're a bit closer there and we've got a bit more idea of what the teams might be and how that might work out. Just a quick look at the top scorers. So Radulovic at Hoyikor is now on, I think, 17 goals from 22 games. Ashley Coffey at Oulu, 12 from 22. Peter Goodley, you mentioned earlier, 12 in 23, but probably those 12 coming in the last 8 games or so. And then Jaime Moreno from Asicor on 11. So I think it's about time that Radulovic was sold overseas and gave everyone else a chance of being more competitive in the games. Anything else to say about the Veikkausliiga at the moment, Rich, or should we bring Ville into the conversation and have a chat about VPS?
I think VPS are the story of certainly the last couple of months. I think we should hear a little bit more about them.
Yeah, that's true. So you've mentioned already, Ville, hi, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
I have, I have had to, as an Asicor fan, give a lot of praise to VPS this year, which doesn't always come naturally to me. But it was me. I want this on the record. It was me that instigated finding someone to come on here, because I think it's really important that we hear from Vaasa about what's been going on there. But and Rich said 12 wins in a row, 36 points from 36, and it's really been a season of 2 halves. How, as a VPS Vaasa fan, how has that been for you? Take us back to the cold days of April and how things looked then.
Well, certainly, it's not something that happens every year. We mostly have had like totally different kind of runs in late decades or so. But I think start of the season, VPS was most people were guessing that VPS is going to be like close to bottom of the league and close to relegation. I think VPS people had we have good last season, as you mentioned, and I think hopes were that we can build on that, and we were able to keep most of our players, most of our important players, except for the striker, the main target guy, and so that was the position on going to the league. And the first half of the regular season, it went. I wouldn't say it went. Well, we were last, so it went badly. But I've seen worse plays on the pitch. We had some injuries and some really close games, and something. Well, this is what the manager says, that nothing happened. We just like those things that we were losing from, like we just starting to play better and better and play in the way we were thinking about playing. So I think really the main thing is that VPS has a good idea and really different idea of playing Veikkausliiga football, and it seems to be working. And other main thing is that we have the right players for it, not the best players, but the right players, and also not that many injuries on the critical points.
What is this way of playing? You say they've got their idea how they want to play, and they've got the right players for it. How does that manifest itself in the way they play the game? What do they do?
Well, to put it simply, there are lots of tall and strong players on the field. So, but that is something that has been missing from Finnish football for a quite time. From in the like 80s and 90s and stuff like that, Finnish football was considered to be like physical football, a physical league, and because like poor international games, there maybe was this was thought to be like a bad thing, and now maybe it's come back to the fashion. VPS still are playing like modern football and good football, but still to have lots of big players on the pitch, that is a like simple and effective way of playing, especially in Veikkausliiga, where that is not mostly the question in the most teams.
So is it passing football, but with speed and physical power?
I think it's maybe that idea is that we have like two gears. We can play fast and direct football, but we can also play like slow attacks and crosses from corners, and it's hard to play against VPS. It's hard to, if you press high, there's always the chance of the long balls towards the big guys in the front, and if you just pull back, there's a risk of set pieces and corners and just like regular crosses.
I'm looking at the sort of some of the statistics, and it really is a kind of half and half the season. The first 12 games, you won 1, drew 3, lost 8, scored 6, conceded 18. Like, you know, averaging 1.5 goals a game against the excuse me. But if you look at the actual scores, apart from a big defeat away to Hoijiko, okay, everyone can do that, there were lots of 1-0s, 0-0s, 2-1s. Like, there were no really heavy defeats, but there were just a lot of games. I remember us talking about it, Rich, that they just weren't really scoring goals. And then at the beginning of June, and I noticed this because at the beginning of June was when Asicor started to go in the opposite direction. And we lost the goalkeeper Egieri back to Arsenal, and things started to go wrong. But for Vaasa, with a 3-0 win at home to Inter, things have gone very right. Did anything change around that time with the players or anything else around the team?
Well, the manager, as I said, he has said constantly that nothing changed. We just believed in ourselves. But there were few changes. There were some injuries in the first half of the season, concentrated on the wing backs. Mm-hmm. So we basically lost all our wing backs and had to play the midfielders and the wing backs, which messed up the midfield play. Mm-hmm. And also we found the opening 11, just small changes of the who plays in what position. Mainly the Russian midfielder Yevgeny Bashkirov. He started as a number 6, and now he has played number 10 position. So he moved higher on the pitch. And also this, I can give you a little scoop or a rumor.
Okay, that, we like scoops and rumors.
I heard that there has been talk that VPS trained in the early season, like really vigorously, really brutal training, and even before matches, even before games, and VPS seemed to be like running out of steam in the middle, in the late part of the games. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's true, or if that affected it, or did it affect that now VPS is in really good shape and they really know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's an interesting point as well, because the training of the team is something that's been suggested for being the problem in Seinäjoki. Like, have they been overtrained, and are they now in the second half of the season just running on empty? So it would be interesting if two teams had done similar thing and had completely opposite results. It shows that it shows that no one knows anything about football, really.
That's I don't know anything about that.
So we're coming now, as Rich said, towards the end of the season. It's possible, still a bit of a stretch to finish second, but I think you're probably safely in third place and looking forward to next season, which potentially has European football. What about the players that have really performed well for you this year? Do you worry about keeping those players next year, or do you think that the European football will be the next step that they want to take with VPS?
VPS has we have got quite good situation contract wise. Most of the important players have contracts next season. Only the leading central defender Pikkarainen and wingback Tyler Reed. Those are only ones from the starting 11 that don't have contract for the next season. And I think they have played spectacular season, and I think they are going to move on to a bigger club. But I think the team is going to be pretty much the same, and it can be even improved next season. So I'm hoping for a medal. I'm hoping for a European place in the European qualifiers next season, and it would be nice to see that in Vaasa again. But this season it's really been a success, even now, and just like the aim was just to avoid relegation and go as high as we can. And now, like the historic run of straight victories and maybe even getting a medal and Euro place. This is from this. It's something that we have. Every football supporter hopes for this.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think you've equaled the record for consecutive wins. So the next game, who is your next fixture against?
It's Inter.
Okay, so that could be the record-breaking 13th win in a run. They're the bottom team of that Mestaruussarja, so you have to be going into that game with a lot of confidence and confident also, I guess, that your top scorer Peter Michael will still be there next year to lead the team into Europe.
Yeah. It's a good position to be, and it's like it's a dream. But still, as we were talking earlier, the team, VPS team, it consists of the right players at the right places. So even Peter Godley Michael is like on fire at the moment. I'm not sure if he has strengths and weaknesses as most of VPS players. So it's not just a matter of like bigger club buying him and putting him on the field. He has to be the right be in the right kind of play and the right kind of position. Just like look at Tete Jengi in Cups at the moment. And Jake Jervis, they can't get anything out of those players.
Yeah, you make it sound so simple. Just pick players that play in the right position on the team, and they'll be able to play good football.
yeah. It's
simple.
There's like million ways how this can go wrong. But still, I think that the main issue is that the VPS way of playing is different from basically all the other teams on Veikkausliiga, and that's why it's hard to play against VPS. And this has been like a strategic choice from the leadership of the club and the director of football, and it's been a risk. Most of teams have some kind of lines that they follow, and there was a chance that this line wouldn't work, but it's now clear that it's working really good at the moment. And I'm interested to see that do other teams in Veikkausliiga try to play this way in future seasons.
That is something that we will look forward to see next year. I think Rich has got a question or a comment.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Obviously, Seba Strandval has been like a hero, a legend of the club. He seems to be quite content in his role of coming on the pitch for the last sort of few minutes of each game now. Is that obviously I've seen some of the games, but just something like that, having him involved and his experience, is that purely to sort of close out the games and have that sort of old wise head? And obviously he's not deadly from a set piece as well in his time. So is that something that has been noted, that he's moved into that phase of his career now as well, that he can just come on for the last sort of 7 or 8 minutes of a game and just sort of keep everyone steady and keep their hand on the wheel?
Well, I think he's like a great captain, and he obviously knows his place in the team at the moment. I suspect that he's not entirely happy about his minutes at the moment, but he had a very bad knee injury last season, and he just he wasn't at the best physical form in the start of the season. And now that that we have this opening 11, and it's hard to break through into that. The team is working so well. I think Seba would have played more if we have been losing games more. But now he must see that his position is the leader of the team in the bench mostly, but also like bringing the experience in the late minutes of the games. And also you have seen that in games that VPS has obviously a good spirit in this team at the moment. So it seems like all the reserve players and the bench are working together and being really happy about the run of victories at the moment, and not that much worrying about their own minutes.
Yeah, because one of the other things that was mentioned a couple of weeks ago was with the fact that half the clubs in Veikkausliiga have changed their coach this year. And I think a lot of credit's been given to VPS for sticking with Nurila, for being bottom after 12 games. A lot of clubs have made a decision earlier and later to change the manager. Obviously, in Cups' case, it was 3 games. In some of the others, they'd waited until September. But I think it's a credit that they have stuck with him. They obviously saw, and as you said, they looked like there was something brewing, whether it was just making sure that everyone got comfortable or whether it was. But I think this is very much a case study now for saying you don't have to sack the manager. There's obviously things going on at clubs we don't know about, but to sit there and see, okay, well, not every manager is going to turn around and give you 12 wins on the spin. But I think having seen, VPS did pretty well last year on their first year back in Veikkausliiga. So it's nice to see that little bit of stability, because it just takes one change or a couple of injuries for that to happen. And one other player I wouldn't mind shouting out, because whenever I see him play, he always seems to do well, is Ronnie Hudd. I know that he was, I'm not sure if this was an actual thing, but like the internet in the spring kind of went a bit crazy. That I think he was on Transfermarkt as one of the sort of hottest young players in the world to watch. And I remember his sort of breaking through last year. He scored a great goal against Hoyevko. But I mean, is he a player that you think might be looking at being picked up by a foreign club in the next sort of winter or two?
Yeah, that's definitely the thing in the air at the moment. He is the like a young star of the team. We shall see how far it goes, but if it's definitely it was even some talk that he will be bought somewhere during the last winter or in the summer. So we shall see. But he's a great, talented young player, and I suspect that we won't be seeing him in Vepsu and Veikkausliiga for much longer.
Great stuff. Ville, thanks for joining us. We, like you, are intrigued to see quite how far VPS can go at the end of this season, and then if that takes you into Europe next year, which looks almost inevitable now, then exactly how those European teams handle this style of football. But thanks very much for joining us, and we hope you continue following the Finnish football show, and that will mean that we have to make sure we're nice about you in future as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, Rich, can you throw forward to the Suomen Cup? There's a couple of games coming up.
Yeah, so we've got the men's Suomen Cup final on Saturday. It's Honka against Ilves. Now, both teams are, well, I say relatively recent winners of the competition. And it's an interesting one because I think, Cups has won the last two editions, and I think we're at a point where, and again, I won't bore people too much with the whole coefficient nonsense, but there is a point where the winners get the best European place in the Conference League. I'm not sure if it'll happen for next year, the edition that the winner of this might go into the second qualifying round or sorry, they already do go into second qualifying. They might go into the Europa League.
Oh, right.
Which would
Okay.
be, yeah. So
Based on coefficient.
yeah, so
Okay.
I think if Hoik do well in the Conference League this year, then that might get an extra place in the Europa League for the Cup winners rather than the Conference League.
So we actually have to cheer on Hoyuk in Europe. It's for the good of everybody.
Well, yeah, but it's also because of their bank balance, isn't it? But
it's yin and yang, isn't
it? Yeah.
And listen, I don't think the coefficient thing is boring. I just think it's really confusing. So when if you can crystallize it for us, if you can absorb all that data and then crystallize it into whoever wins this goes into this, then that's how coefficients work.
Yeah, we're on the cusp of that. I think it's all those things going on in the UEFA bods heads, but yeah, you've got as I said, Ilves won the competition in 2019. Beat Marham in the final, and Honka, I did say it was recent. It was 2012 the last time they won it. So
when recent. You get to our age, Rich, 2012 isn't that long ago.
I remember watching it. That's how it was relatively recent because I watched it. But they beat Cups, unfortunately. But it should be an interesting game. I think Ilves had a really bad run of form, and we've talked about that on previous episodes. And they picked up a bit coming into this round of fixtures and coming into this second phase of the season. And you've got where they changed the manager after sacking Toni Koskela, and they started, I think, was it 6 games or 7 games? I think they even failed to score in. So they've now started to get some goals in the team. They've now started to get wins, and I think coming into a cup final for them, it's a nice little sort of reminder because they're going to the new stadium. I think that's during next year. I'm not sure at what point that handover happens, but yeah, they're finally getting around to playing in the new ground. So
you said that they're getting some goals in a bit of form. The last 3 games, 2-2 away to Hucker, 3-0 win away to Kortepe, and a 2-1 home win against Mariehamn. So they're in a bit of form just at the right time if a cup win is on the cards.
Yeah, it's like people are playing for their places, aren't they? But yeah, let them do it. But I think it's been nice to see because they're the biggest club in Tampere, and I think after a few years when there were no club from Tampere in the top division, the new stadium will be ready soon because I think it's been difficult for them as well playing at the Ratana Stadium rather than at Tamala. But yeah, I think it'd be nice for them. Obviously, the finals in the Olympia Stadium in Helsinki. As we mentioned earlier, Honka had a pretty tricky start to the season. They lost Agon Sadiku and Rui Modesto, and trying to sort of replace them it was difficult for them, and I think they have struggled. They still have most of the team that pushed last year and came third. Eremenko's done okay on and off. Some of the players have come in, haven't been that great, to be honest, but I think they've managed to get a little bit of rhythm going into this. And I think, again, from where they were a couple of years ago and to where they are now, it's a massive improvement. They are still there is still that element of signing foreign players and hoping that they might go on to better things. Obviously, they had Alfredo Morelos before he went to Hoiko. They had Juan Alegria, who also went to Rangers and didn't play. So it's clearly a strategy that they're making. But I think either way, it'd be nice to have 2 teams that aren't the big clubs in the final. It would have been nice if Cups could have gone for a hat-trick, but that's a different matter.
I would just say one thing: the rhythm that Honka are in going into this game is on the back of 2 3-0 defeats. So before that, it had picked up quite a bit for them, but the last couple of games, has not gone the way they might have hoped. So it might suggest there's a chance for Ilves. If I was a gambling man, and I'm not, then a pound on Ilves, I think not even each way, but a pound on Ilves would be worth a go.
Absolutely, and I think we like the old cliches. It's every game's a cup final. You never know, 90 minutes and all that. So, I think again, the two teams, despite being in the separate halves of the table, they are that far apart. I think it just takes one of them to have a good day or an off day. I think going into it, it's just nice to have two clubs that are a little bit different, and looking forward to it. And then
you said that it's nice not to have the two biggest clubs or the two top clubs in the final, and then we come to the women's game.
We do. We have Cups playing HJK on Sunday, also at the Olympiastadion. Cups, I'm going to have to double check. I think they secured the title already. Certainly very close in the Kansallinen and Liga. Yes, Cups, I think, need a draw from their last game the last two games to win the title there. So, but they're the top two,
right, okay,
in that division. So again, yes, we've got that.
So HJK are not plucky underdogs in this fixture.
Absolutely not. No. I mean, Cups over the last 3 or 4 years have been the most successful club in the women's game as well. But HJK aren't far behind. And it's something we can talk about maybe during the close season or before next year, where HJK's women's club have in many ways separated or being run as a separate entity from the men's club. So still under the same HJK umbrella, but they're being run as almost as much as they can as a separate beast. But then, the women's game has definitely got Åland United a third as well. Honka doing well there. So it'll be good to see. I think Cups go for a double. Be nice. But they got knocked out of the Women's Champions League, so they'll be a little bit smarting. So I think it'll be nice for them if they can pick up another pot.
I think what we'll try and do is come back maybe on Sunday, just a very quick update from those two games. We'll try and find enough Finnish Football Show hosts that have seen some of these games to bring you some opinions there, but at least a quick update on what happens there, and hopefully enough content to keep our Cups fan listener happy who wanted us to make sure we're mentioning. Oh, was it Honka fan? Sorry,
it's Honka
fan. Yeah, Honka fan that wanted to us to make sure we're covering Honka. So we took notice of what was being said. Okay, Rich. Let's move on. Finland's Women's Nations League campaign 2024. We previewed it the other week by explaining that this is the inaugural Women's Nations League. Finland are in Group B2, so it's League B Group 2. I got myself in a right pickle last week trying to remember how that all works. And two games. Friday game was at home to Slovakia, which saw Finland pick up a 4-0 win, a pretty comfortable win, and I think the starting lineup was all fairly familiar. The sort of Keke had spoken last week. We had Korpila in goal, Koivisto, Kuikka, Nyström, and Pikkujämsä across the back. Ahtinen, Summanen, and Kosola in the midfield, nominally, with Erling just behind the front two of Rantelä and Selström. And I had a lesson in pronunciation during this game, Rich, because I was told that the A with 2 dots over the top, which you would normally pronounce A in Finnish, but because Linda Selström has a Swedish name, then that letter is pronounced as an E. So it's Selström. There you go, listener. That's a free pronunciation guide for you. Did you manage to watch this game, Rich?
I saw the goals,
yes, okay.
And I kind of followed it roughly as it was going on. It was not really great kickoff time for for those of us in the UK. But
no, we did
again,
have some great kickoff times for those of us in Finland this time round. That was quite convenient.
Makes a nice change, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But again, as the preview stated, it was a very strong Finland team that got put out, and I think they were strong, and I think there's, as we mentioned before, that the three teams that Finland are playing in this group, they've beaten this calendar year already.
Yeah.
And sort of linking to another podcast that I listened to this morning, The Sound of Football, where they talked about the Women's Nations League in general, and how maybe the gap between the top teams and the other sort of lower ranked teams is starting to widen. And I think and they took England as a case in point, that England had won qualifiers in the last World Cup qualifying campaign by 10-0, 10-0, 20-0, things like that. And I think that they mentioned, Terry and Graham talked about how the top 16 or so teams are pulling away. And I think Finland are probably on the cusp of very much on the coattails of that group. Finland qualified for the last Euros. They were fairly close to the last World Cup and should be confident of making the next Euros as well. This is a strong group of players playing abroad at high levels. And I think even those playing domestically still get included as well. It was, it's interesting. Linda Sällström is still going. I think that was a 56th goal off the top of my head for Finland. So she's Finland's record goal scorer of either gender. And again, I think just the statistics kind of speak for themselves when you look at the 90 minutes. 3-0 up at half time. And I think when you look at it as a whole, while Slovakia did have chances from what I saw, Finland looked relatively comfortable.
No, I think it was comfortable, and it also helped that in the first goal came in 5 minutes, and Sällström was on the goal line in front of the goalkeeper, not really impeding her, and a corner came in, and she just headed it in from on the line, and it was poor defending, but it was also good positioning. But it also made me notice, and I checked it out, that the Slovakia goalkeeper was only 1.63 meters tall, which is 5'4". So for the rest of the game, I was just thinking, like, just shoot. It's like whenever you see a small keeper, whether it's in professional football, you don't tend to see so many small keepers in men's football nowadays. You think back to the days of Hans Segers playing for Wimbledon and Forest. He was fairly short, but
I'm just trying to think. Jorge Campos was about 5'6", wasn't he?
Right. Okay. Yeah, that was quite a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, just shoot from wherever you can, and that first goal was in the fifth minute, and then 2-0 in the 23rd minute. Ria Erling shot from distance, a low shot. It hit the post and kind of bounced out into the penalty box, and Jutta Rantala followed up, just stroked it home unchallenged for a nice 2-0. 45 plus 1 minutes just before half time. Some lovely expansive attacking teamwork. The Finland players pushing forward left, right, and centre, and the ball was played over the top out to the left to Katarina Kosola, and she sort of came in towards the goal from the left-hand side, and just as she shot fairly straight, and the goalkeeper sort of moved a little bit out of the way and was all out of position and sort of, I don't want to say dived out of the way, but certainly could have been more in the way of the shot when it finally came in. But it was a well-deserved goal, and again the 4-0 again was Kosola. The ball played over the top for her, and she ran through on her own and slipped it under the goalkeeper for that 4-0 win. And I think you're right, Rich. It seemed fairly comfortable.
Yeah, and I think this is the position where Finland are for now, and we'll see going into future editions, and that Finland are very much that kind of top of that sort of pot of teams. They were the top seeds, and I think, and as we'll talk about from the Romania game, which I saw the highlights of, that was, and the stats, that was an incredibly one-sided game in terms of shots on goal, and albeit the winning goal came from a penalty. You think if Finland go on to win this group and get promoted into the next division the next time round, that's when things will really be a lot tougher, and you'll see then, because it's good for Finland to get these competitive games, and again, Finland have played these teams already, and Finland play a lot of these sort of 3 and 4 team tournaments throughout the year, and when we've got the qualifiers for the next round of Euros coming too. So I think most of these players, there are some approaching that kind of age where you think, looking ahead and what's coming through behind them. But then, as KK alluded to on the last episode, Marcus Alaranta, the coach, he's been involved in the women's game. He was the under-17s coach before he took the main job last year. This year, and I think that continuity is vital, because you're not having an external person coming in and picking just who's playing. He's looking at players who've played well in the younger age groups, and I think that's going to be vital as we go into the next 2 to 3 year period, certainly heading into the next World Cup. But I think that the future's bright, and as we mentioned for the Romania game, not many changes. The same core of the team put out, and I think look really impressive again.
Yeah, I think we mentioned the other day about the FIFA rankings for the European teams, and Finland are 28th, Slovakia were 48th, and then coming into the game against Romania, who are 39th in the rankings. So in theory, this was going to be Finland's toughest game, but they also beat Romania 4-0 earlier in the year. So where exactly, at the start of the game, I said, my prediction was 2-0. Why was I so sort of pessimistic? And then the game finished 1-0. It was like, okay, maybe it wasn't so far off. It was, so let's start. Romania against Finland was last night on Tuesday 26th, and the starting lineup was, there was a change in goal. So Anna Tamminen coming in for Tini Korpela. And I wonder if that's one of those sort of generational changes that might be about to start to happen. I think Tinny is 37 now. She's still playing at a very high level with Roma now, having moved from Spurs. But Anna Tamminen is doing the business in Sweden for Hammarby as well. The defence was the same: Koivisto, Kuikka, Nyström and Pikkujämsä. The midfield, there was one change, so it was Kosola, Summanen and Pelkurinen coming in on the right-hand side, and then Erling behind Rantala and Selström again. So, like you say, a couple of changes, but much the same starting team. And it was hot over there. It was between 26 and 29 degrees. It was humid, and the pitch was atrocious. They said beforehand that Finland hadn't been able to train on the pitch the night before. They'd had to train on an astro pitch, artificial pitch next door. And at the first kickoff at the start of the game, it already looked like a ploughed field. So that didn't help the game. And apparently it was very soft underfoot as well. And I think all of those things really affected the game. It was quite a tough watch. You said it was one-sided, and it's difficult. I haven't been able to find anyway possession stats for these games. There's a lot of other stats on the UEFA website about shots and things like that, which tells part of the story. But it did feel like Finland controlled this game to a point, without really ever completely putting it to bed. And as the game wore on, Romania became more and more physical. Although that said, there were quite a lot of coming togethers of players, and both of the players going down. One one of their attacking midfield players seemed to get clattered every 5 minutes or so. She was really in the waters. But the game was, I mean, Finland had a chance in the first minute, a break down the left, along the floor, right across the face of the goal, and just as I think it was Selstrom was coming in at the back post, it was cleared by the defender, and I thought, okay, this is a positive start. Let's keep this going. But then it was and there were a few sort of attacking moves and possibilities for Finland, but it was in the 15th minute that a penalty was awarded as a cross came into the box from the left. There was some shirt pulling going on, which gave the opportunity for Summanen to stroke home the penalty into the bottom left-hand corner, and it felt like, okay, let's build on this, and that's how the final result changed. And I have to confess that partway through the first half, it got a little bit dark in my lounge, and I'd had a glass of beer, and I might have nodded off and missed something. And then I looked at the stats, and it suggested that I hadn't missed that much, really.
Yeah, and I think as we sort of come out of that, thinking where Finland have maximum points from 2 games, 2 clean sheets, and really going into the next round, then it's a double header against Croatia.
Yeah.
Home and then away, I think it is. So you think if they come through that with 4 or even 6 points, it's all wrapped up. We've talked about before the momentum that the men's team picked up, and this women's team is in a very different phase of their journey than the men's team were. But again, after the Euros when they lost all 3 games, and I think it was a bit of a schooling, and going back to this and getting semi-competitive games back under their belt with a goal to the next round of Euros. It's great for the confidence. It's great to blood in those younger players on the verge of getting some minutes, and especially as players like Tinny and Linda is of she's 100. I've lost track of how many caps she's got now. She's got about 140 caps as well. So these are players that will need replacing at some point. And I guess that getting that momentum and getting those fans back into the stadium, because I think all 3 games of the Nations League are in Turku. So it's good for the fans to get back on winning ways and in front of that stadium, because that's what helped the men's team when, albeit it wasn't in Helsinki at the time, but most of the games were in Tampere, but in front of mostly full stadiums, winning games, cheering the team on. I think we've seen for the men's, the Nations League is generally a very good thing, generally. What happens next? If they go up to League A, who knows? They will get at least a couple of the big clubs, the big teams in there. But I think, as a start, they're going to turn around and, just look at the scoreboard: 2 games, 2 wins, 5 goals, none conceded.
Yeah, I think I think that's exactly right. And also, I had this thought that you raised already about if they go up, how will they find it? There's 16 stronger teams in that League A. Then there's 16 teams in this League B, which Finland is in. If Finland is ranked 28th in the world, then some of these other groups must, or 28th in Europe, then am I confusing myself? Are they world rankings and I'm looking at Europe?
So they're 28th in the FIFA rankings, which is world rankings, but that's obviously, I don't know off the top of my head, but you think there are other nations in there that are non-Europe will be above them as well.
So, yeah, okay, no, that makes sense. So anyway, I look at the other Group B1, the other Group B groups, the League B groups, and I don't know these teams well enough to say if any of these other groups look particularly stronger. But if Finland go through this up into the top leagues, then there are some big countries there, and it starts to look a bit. It looks exciting and intimidating in equal measure, I suppose. So, let's do the job. Let's deal with the job in hand first. Let's get this. Games against Croatia, who are ranked about 60 in the world. So,
they beat Romania as well. So
they did. Yeah, they did, but they also lost 4-0 to Slovakia, who we just beat 4-0. So who knows?
So that means that Finland should win 16-0. I think is that how it works, or
8-0? Something like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's wait and see. But it's exciting stuff, and we're going to do this kind of preview and report shows ahead of those. It does mean that every 2 weeks there are Hulkijat games, and every 2 weeks there are Helmarit games, and by the middle of December we're just about ready for a nervous breakdown.
Well, hopefully with some points on the board as well. At least we'll know by December. We'll know how Finland's Euro group went and how men's team, and we'll know how the Nations League finished.
Yeah, and also as we talked about last time, the final positions once this Nations League has been played and the teams are reassigned, promoted, relegated, or whatever, that will then form the groups for the next Euro qualifiers, which takes place next year. So, but I reckon, Rich, that we're just about done. We've covered a lot of stuff there, and it was great to have Ville join us and talk about VPS Vaasa. It's given me a few things to look out for, and they come to Seinäjoki on the last game of the season. So,
it is the last game, isn't it?
It is the last game, which could have been big, but I got a feeling by the time we get there, it won't really have quite the pizzazz that it might have done.
Well, as you mentioned, that last game, that game at the weekend against Inter, that'll be potentially win 13 where the run started. So that'll be I think that's the record anyway for one calendar year. I think the record of any Finnish top flight was 15 across 2 seasons. So
they've got enough games to do that in one season.
Well, if they win their final 3 games, then but they've got HJK next after that. So
we'll see. HJK might have it all sewn up by then.
Well, that'll be the game they clinch it, maybe.
Yeah. All right, listener, I've put links and pictures and everything to sort of go along with everything we've been talking about in the blog post. So if you look in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this, then you'll find all of that info there, and maybe gives you something to look at while you're listening, or check up on if we know what we're talking about, but mostly we do. We will come back with a little bit of a Suomen Cup follow-up, and then maybe in a couple of weeks' time there will have been a couple of rounds of Veikkausliiga games, and we'll come back then and also look forward to the next lot of Euro qualifiers for the Hulkijat. I did that all off the top of my head, and it sounded convincing. So let's see how we get on. But Rich, thanks for joining us today.
Hey.
Thanks again to Ville for coming in, VPS Vaasa fan and listener until the next episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Bye.
It does.
You've been listening to the Finnish Football Show. You can find us online at finishfootballshow.com. Remember to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening or watching. You can follow the Finnish Football Show page and group on Facebook and also on Instagram. See the links in the episode description. You can also connect with the 5 hosts on Twitter, at Explore Finland, at FC Suomi, at Escape to Suomi, at Kekkimuleri, and at Mano99. Links to the Finnish Football Show merch stores are also in the episode description.